Deep in the bowels of a forgotten Pennsylvania home, a hidden wall crumbles, releasing air as cold as the grave. Inside, a leather-bound diary whispers a confession. 300 souls crossed my threshold in the dead of night, and not one emerged as they arrived. Was this divine mercy or unholy judgment? Hannah Grace's secret awaits.
The summer sun beat down mercilessly on Maple Street in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the year 1960, a century after the shadows of the Civil War had first stretched across the nation. The old Brennan house stood like a sentinel from another era, its weathered clapboard siding peeling like old skin, windows clouded with decades of grime, and a sagging porch that creaked under the weight of forgotten footsteps. It was slated for demolition, another victim of progress, to be razed for a gleaming new shopping plaza where families would wander aisles of canned goods and shiny appliances, oblivious to the earth they trod upon. The construction crew, a ragtag band of men in hard hats and sweat-soaked shirts, swung their sledgehammers with rhythmic precision, the metallic clangs echoing through the quiet neighborhood like distant thunder. Robert Chen, the foreman, a burly man in his 40s with calloused hands scarred from 20 years of breaking and building, oversaw the operation with a practiced eye. The house had resisted them at every turn, as if reluctant to yield its secrets. Beams groaned in protest, nails popped like gunfire, and dust clouds billowed like smoke from a battlefield. But it was in the basement, that dim, musty underworld lit only by swinging bare bulbs, where the true resistance lay. The crew had been chipping away at a peculiar section of wall, bricked unevenly as if added in haste. "Something off about this," one worker muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Feels like it's hiding something." With a final resounding crack, the wall gave way. A rush of air escaped, unnaturally frigid, slicing through the humid August heat like a blade from the Arctic. It carried a scent not of rot or mildew, but something deeper, more primordial, the stale breath of sealed tombs, mingled with faint traces of smoke and iron, evoking blood and ash. Chen's skin prickled. The men stepped back, tools clattering to the concrete floor. "What in God's name?" Chen whispered, his voice trailing off as he shone his flashlight into the cavity. Nestled within, wrapped in faded oilcloth and encased in a rusted tin box, was a diary. Its leather cover was cracked like parched earth, edges frayed as if clawed by time itself. The pages inside were brittle, yellowed like ancient parchment, inscribed in a precise feminine hand that spoke of discipline and despair. Chen, no scholar but a man with an instinct for the extraordinary, gingerly opened it. The first entry leapt out at him, words that sent a shiver down his spine. "May the Lord have mercy on my soul for the burdens I bear. 300 weary travelers sought refuge in these walls from 1856 to 1861, and none departed as the innocents they once were. Their transformations weigh upon me like chains in the hereafter." Dated November 14, 1860. Signed, Hannah Grace Brennan. The name stirred no immediate recognition in Chen, but as he flipped through, glimpses of torment emerged, sketches of hidden passages, lists of names crossed out with trembling ink, references to divine retribution and the sins that bind us all. He sealed the box and halted the demolition. "This ain't trash," he told his crew, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "This is history, or something darker." Word spread like wildfire through Lancaster's academic circles. Historians, archivists, and even paranormal enthusiasts descended upon the site, their eyes wide with the thrill of discovery. Official records painted Hannah as a reclusive widow, born 1818, married 1839, widowed 1854, deceased 1862 in quiet solitude. No heirs, no scandals, just a faded entry in the town ledger. But this diary shattered that facade, unveiling a woman entangled in the Underground Railroad's perilous web, yet with an ominous twist. 300 runaways, it claimed, had passed through her home, their fates altered in ways that hinted at moral reckonings, spiritual trials, or worse. The house itself amplified the mystery. Vacant for years, it had cycled through owners like a cursed relic. The last resident fled in 1957, abandoning furniture mid-meal, plates still set on the table as if interrupted by an unseen presence. Neighbors whispered of anomalies, lights flickering in empty rooms, shadows gliding across curtains at midnight, faint cries echoing from the basement on stormy nights. Children dared each other to approach, but none lingered. Real estate listings languished, prices slashed, yet buyers sensed an invisible weight, a spiritual residue perhaps of unresolved sins clinging to the walls like frost. As experts pored over the diary, piecing together Hannah's life, a portrait emerged not of a saintly abolitionist, but of a soul tormented by divine purpose. Her entries wove biblical allusions, echoes of Exodus, where the enslaved fled Pharaoh's grasp, yet faced trials in the wilderness, parables of judgment, where the wicked were separated like wheat from chaff. "In this house," she wrote in one passage, "I became the instrument of God's hidden justice. Some found freedom, others the redemption their sins demanded." What sins? What redemptions? The diary teased but never fully revealed, leaving readers with a chilling sense of incompletion, as if Hannah's spirit still guarded her truths.
To understand Hannah Grace Brennan, one must journey back to her origins, rooted in the harsh soil of 19th century Pennsylvania. Born on a biting January dawn in 1818, she entered the world amid the Yoder farm's austere simplicity. 120 acres of stubborn, rock-strewn land 8 miles from Lancaster. The Yoders were Mennonites, descendants of Swiss Anabaptists who fled persecution to forge lives of piety in the New World. Their faith was a fortress: plain dress, rejection of worldly vanities, communal worship that emphasized humility before God. Samuel Yoder, Hannah's father, embodied this rigor. A stern patriarch with a beard like biblical prophets, hands gnarled from tilling unyielding earth. Rachel, her mother, was his quiet counterpart, weaving devotion into every chore. Hannah's childhood was a tapestry of labor and liturgy. Dawn broke with the lowing of cows, her small hands milking until blisters formed, then gathering eggs from coops that reeked of feathers and straw. Days blurred into cycles of scrubbing floors on knees raw from splintered wood, sewing quilts by flickering lantern light, preserving jams in steaming kitchens where the air hung heavy with vinegar and sugar. Evenings brought prayer meetings in the barn, voices rising in hymns that praised submission. "Thy will be done, O Lord, in earth as in heaven." The family Bible, its pages worn thin, was her sole tutor. Verses on obedience, the perils of pride, the fires of perdition for those who strayed. Yet Hannah's spirit chafed against this cage. Unlike her elder sister Mary, who embraced the yoke with serene acceptance, Hannah harbored a restless flame. Her eyes, sharp and inquisitive, questioned the divine order. Why did God decree slavery's chains for some, while others wielded the whip? Why must women bow silently to men's decrees, their voices muted like echoes in a well? Why was suffering exalted as virtue, joy dismissed as temptation? These queries festered unspoken, for to voice them was heresy. Rachel noticed the storm brewing in her daughter's gaze. "Child," she warned one frost-laced evening when Hannah was 15, kneading dough by the hearth's dying embers, "your soul wanders like a lost lamb. Such unrest invites the adversary. Seek peace in God's design, or sorrow will claim you." Hannah heeded, or tried. She plunged into toil, letting exhaustion numb her mind, hauling water from icy streams, churning butter until her arms ached like lead. She memorized psalms, reciting them under starlit skies. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Nights found her prostrate on the cold plank floor, knees bruised, back arched in supplication, pleading for divine calm to quench her inner fire. But the flames only roared higher, fueled by glimpses of the wider world. travelers' tales at church gatherings, snippets of news from Lancaster's markets about abolitionist fervor, whispers of souls fleeing bondage toward northern stars. At 19, fate, or Providence, intervened. Accompanying her father to Lancaster's bustling market, baskets laden with eggs and butter, Hannah passed a construction site on Queen Street. Sawdust swirled in the air, hammers rang like church bells, and amid the chaos stood Thomas Brennan, a lanky Irish apprentice, his sleeves rolled to reveal forearms dusted with wood shavings, his smile as warm as sunlight-piercing clouds. Their eyes met briefly, a fleeting connection, yet it lingered in Hannah like a sacred verse. 3 weeks later, another trip, this time words exchanged. "Fine day, miss," his brogue soft as river water, "name's Thomas." What drew her was his gaze, not appraising her as chattel or broodmare as Mennonite suitors did, but seeing her essence, her hidden spark. Thomas, an orphan immigrant at 16, shared fragments of his shattered past, Ireland's famine-scarred fields, parents lost to the Atlantic's merciless waves, survival in America's unforgiving embrace. Hannah confided her doubts, the farm's stifling piety, the questions God seemed deaf to. Love blossomed in stolen moments, market detours, whispered conversations by half-built storefronts, defying barriers of faith and fortune. Thomas, Catholic and penniless, was the epitome of her father's warnings, "Beware the outsiders, lest they drag your soul to ruin." Yet love's alchemy transformed impossibility into defiance. In summer 1839, they wed in a stark civil office, no kin to witness, Hannah's heart pounding like a war drum. 21 and exiled, she faced Samuel's wrath, disownment, a rifle-barred gate, her name erased from family lore. "You are dead to us," he thundered, eyes like Judgment Day. Hannah's tears soaked the road home, but regret? None. Thomas was her redemption, an earthly grace amid spiritual drought.
Their union forged in hardship, a cramped apartment above a bakery, scents of rising bread mingling with their dreams. Hannah's needles flew by candlelight, mending strangers' garments. Thomas hammered dawn to dusk, splinters embedding like stigmata. Frugal meals of porridge and greens, clothes patched until threadbare. By 1842, savings birthed their haven, the Maple Street house, a dilapidated shell they resurrected. Thomas wielded tools like a sculptor, banishing rot with sweat and saw. Hannah scrubbed until surfaces gleamed, planting a garden where tomatoes ripened like forbidden fruit, herbs whispering of Eden's lost bounty. Happiness bloomed, yet shadowed by barrenness. Months stretched to years. Hannah's womb remained silent, a void echoing her prayers. Doctors probed, offered shrugs. Neighbors murmured of divine punishment for her apostasy. Folk cures, teas of nettle and rue, poultices under moonlit skies, yielded not. Thomas masked his ache, but Hannah saw it, the wistful glances at playing children, the hush in his voice amid family tales. By 1850, at 32, she surrendered to fate's decree, the hollowness a constant companion, like a thorn in the flesh from Paul's epistles. "Perhaps this is my cross," she confided to her journal, ink blurring with unshed tears. "God withholds to teach humility, or to prepare me for greater trials." Thomas's devotion never wavered, a steadfast love mirroring the biblical Ruth's vow. In 1853, opportunity dawned, a grand bank project in Lancaster, perilous scaffolds soaring like Babel's tower. Pay promised expansion, a workshop, extra rooms symbolizing unfulfilled legacies. But on a February morn in 1854, tragedy struck. A beam plummeted, crushing Thomas in an instant. Chest caved, life extinguished like a snuffed flame. 36, gone. Hannah's scream rent the air when news arrived, her world fracturing into shards of grief. Isolation descended. Neighbors, once cordial, averted eyes, her widowhood a mirror to their fears.
Casseroles arrived, but conversations fled. She interred him in Catholic soil, standing solitary as the priest intoned rites, wind whipping her veil like accusatory fingers. Returning to the echoing house, Hannah became a specter, sewing by day in mechanical trance, nights pacing moonlit rooms, whispering to Thomas's absent shade. Rumors swirled. She conversed with ghosts, stared into voids, lamps burned eternal against encroaching dark. Truth laced the tales. Insomnia drove her outdoors, where stars mocked her solitude. Candles warded off despair's abyss. In this nadir, spiritual wrestling intensified. Hannah's faith, once questioned, now raged against heaven. "Why, Lord," she scrawled, pages stained with fury, "you took my kin, my love, my hope of legacy. Am I Job, tested to breaking, or Pharaoh, hardened for destruction?" The house amplified her torment, creaks like accusatory whispers, shadows twisting into forms of judgment. Yet amid the void, a purpose stirred, biblical echoes of hospitality to strangers, the command to free the oppressed. Then, on a March night in 1856, fate knocked, literally. Past 10, the hour of witches and wanderers, a soft rapping pierced the silence. Hannah, huddled by the fire's embers, hesitated. The knocks persisted, urgent yet restrained. Curiosity, that ancient temptress, compelled her to the door. Framed in moonlight stood a figure, tall, emaciated, clad in tatters, eyes hollowed by terror and toil. His skin, dark as polished ebony, bore scars like maps of suffering. He scanned the street, breath ragged. "Ma'am," he rasped, voice thick with southern drawl. "Word on the line says this house, it's a station, safe harbor for the weary. Please, in God's name, let me in." Hannah's heart seized. The Underground Railroad, whispers she'd heard in markets, tales of conductors guiding slaves north under starlit veils. But her? Chosen? As the man stepped into the lamplight, his plea hung like incense, invoking divine mandate. "For I was a stranger, and ye took me in." In that moment, Hannah glimpsed her redemption, a path from personal abyss to sacred duty, where her empty home could birth freedoms untold. Yet the diary's later words loomed: transformations, burdens, judgments. What shadows would this calling cast?
The March wind howled like a chorus of lost prophets outside Hannah Grace Brennan's modest home on Maple Street, carrying the chill of impending judgment through the cracks in the weathered wooden frame. It was well past 10 o'clock, the hour when shadows deepened and the veil between the living and the divine seemed thinnest. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of cooled hearth ashes and lingering solitude, Hannah's constant companions since Thomas's untimely departure to the grave. The flickering glow of a single tallow candle cast elongated shadows across the kitchen walls, dancing like restless spirits in the draught. Hannah sat at the scarred oak table, her fingers tracing absent patterns on its surface, her mind adrift in the sea of grief that had become her existence. The house, once a haven of shared whispers and tender touches, now echoed with emptiness, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of her isolation, a biblical barrenness that mirrored Sarah's long wait for Isaac, yet without the promise of fulfillment. The knock came softly at first, almost swallowed by the storm's fury. Tap, 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 like the gentle rapping of Elijah at the widow's door in Zarephath, testing faith amid famine. Hannah froze, her heart seizing in her chest, a mix of curiosity and caution surging through her veins. Who would venture out on such a night? No neighbor, surely. They had long since withdrawn, uncomfortable with the widow's lingering sorrow, whispering of her as one touched by madness or divine disfavor. The knocking persisted, insistent yet muffled, as if the caller feared drawing attention from unseen watchers. With a deep breath, Hannah rose, her woolen shawl slipping slightly from her shoulders, and approached the door.
The latch felt cold as iron forged and hell's fires under her palm. She hesitated, peering through the small, fogged pane of glass. A silhouette loomed, tall, hunched against the rain. She cracked the door, a gust of wet wind rushing in, extinguishing the candle and plunging the entryway into near darkness. The man on her porch was a vision of human frailty. Gaunt, his threadbare coat plastered to his frame, water streaming from a battered hat that shadowed his face. His skin gleamed dark under the faint moonlight, marked with the raw evidence of hardship, scars like whiplashes peeking from his collar, eyes wide with the primal fear of the hunted. "Please, ma'am," he rasped, voice hoarse from exposure, trembling not just from cold, but from the weight of pursuit. "In the name of mercy, can I step inside? If they catch me—" His words trailed into the void, but the terror etched in his features spoke volumes of chains, bloodhounds, and the merciless hunters empowered by the Fugitive Slave Act, that infernal law of 1850, which turned every free soil into a potential snare. Something stirred within Hannah, a flicker of empathy, or perhaps divine prompting, like the still small voice that guided Elijah through the wilderness. She stepped aside, gesturing him in with a hurried wave. He slipped past, bringing the scent of muddied earth and sweat-soaked desperation. She bolted the door behind him, the click resounding like a seal on fate. In the hallway's dimness, lit now by a hastily relit lantern, he stood dripping, shoulders slumped, hands clasped as if in supplication. "Who are you?" Hannah demanded, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "What's brought you here?" "Name's Nathan," he murmured, eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting betrayal. "Been on the run 2 weeks now. Word along the line, safe houses for folk like me. A contact in Philadelphia pointed me here, said a kind widow helps the weary. Are you her?" Hannah's brow furrowed, pieces falling into place like stones in a mosaic of forbidden aid. "Folk like you mean—" "Enslaved," he cut in, blunt as a hammerfall. "From Maryland's chains, broke free, heading to Canada where no master's whip can reach. But I'm hurt bad, feet torn from the miles, fever burning me up. Just need a night, maybe 2 to mend, then I'm ghost." The risk loomed colossal in Hannah's mind. Federal crime, fines that could strip her of this house, her last tether to Thomas, imprisonment, or worse, the mob's wrath in a town divided by abolition's fire. Yet as she beheld Nathan's frailty, memories flooded. Her own defiance against paternal tyranny, marrying Thomas against the Mennonite edicts, choosing love over obedience. And Thomas's words, spoken one evening by the fire as news of sectional strife crackled in the air. "If the oppressed knocked, Hannah, we'd open, not for glory, but because Scripture bids us, hide the outcasts, betray not him that wandereth." Had she meant her agreement then? Now, in this crucible, her purpose crystallized, a redemption for her childless void, a way to channel unspent maternal grace.
"Come," she said softly, leading him to the kitchen where the embers still glowed faintly, casting a warm, hellish hue on the flagstone floor. She stoked the fire, flames leaping like tongues of Pentecost, and examined his feet by the light, soles lacerated, crusted with blood and dirt, infections festering like unconfessed sins. Boiling water in a blackened kettle, she cleansed the wounds with gentle precision, the steam rising like incense of atonement. Bandages from her linen chest wrapped them snugly, and she served sustenance, crusty bread, sharp cheese, remnants of roasted fowl, watching as he devoured it with the fervor of the starving prodigal son. "The cellar," she instructed. "It's sparse but concealed, warm enough, dry, no eyes from the street." Tears glistened in Nathan's eyes, a silent prayer of gratitude. "Bless you, ma'am. Thought the Lord had forsaken me." As she led him down the creaking stairs into the damp underbelly of the house, stone walls slick with moisture, air thick with the earthy tang of roots and forgotten preserves, Hannah felt a shift.
The cellar, once a mere storage for winter's hoard, now pulsed with potential sanctity, a modern catacomb for the persecuted. She provided blankets, coarse but clean, and retreated upstairs, locking the door with a key that felt heavier than before. Alone again, she sank into a chair, head in hands, the weight of her decision pressing like the millstone Christ warned of for those who offend the little ones. Was this mercy or hubris, playing God in a world rife with retribution? Nathan lingered 3 days, his fever breaking like dawn after tribulation, strength returning in increments. On the eve of departure, as pre-dawn gray seeped through the shutters, he confided, "Others will follow, ma'am. The grapevine whispers, safe harbors like yours. If your heart's open, they'll come seekin'." Then he vanished into the mist-shrouded streets, northbound toward liberty or peril, a fleeting soul in Hannah's ledger of grace. True to his prophecy, the knocks multiplied. 2 weeks later, another. Esther, a young woman in her 20s, babe swaddled against her back, eyes hollowed by exhaustion's chisel. No hesitation this time. Hannah ushered her in, the infant's soft cries piercing the quiet like a lamentation psalm. Food, rest, care. Esther mended over 5 days, her tale unfolding one starlit night as rain pattered on the roof like divine tears. Born into Virginia's plantation hell, violated by the owner's son, her child doomed to auction. "Better die free than live chained," she whispered, voice cracking. Holding the babe, warm bundle of innocence, tiny fists clutching Hannah's finger, a maternal ache bloomed anew. This, perhaps, was God's design, her barrenness a vessel for broader salvation, echoing Mary's fiat, turning personal loss into communal redemption. As Esther departed, gratitude in her eyes, Hannah sensed her calling solidify, a conductor on the Underground Railroad, her home a station in the exodus from bondage. The influx grew. Solitary wanderers, pairs fleeing in tandem, families with wide-eyed children clutching wags like talismans. Hannah adapted, stockpiling provisions in the cellar, sacks of cornmeal dusted with weevils, salted pork hanging like pendants, beans in earthen jars. Medicines amassed, willow bark for fevers, poultices for wounds, echoing the Good Samaritan's oil and wine. She mapped allies, neighbors with abolitionist leanings, their nods subtle as coded scripture, versus potential betrayers, eyes sharp as Judas's kiss. Vigilance became her armor, ears attuned to every rustle, every hoofbeat on the cobbled street. But capacity strained. The cellar, cramped as Jonah's whale belly, sufficed for 2s and 3s, but groups swelled. Risk mounted. Shadows through windows could doom all. In summer 1856, Hannah enlisted Friedrich, a stoic German newcomer with halting English, to excavate deeper. "Storage for harvests," she explained, her voice steady as Ruth's pledge. He dug relentlessly, earth yielding in clods that smelled of buried secrets, shoring walls with brick and beam over 6 grueling weeks. Paid in coin and victuals, he departed none the wiser. Yet this was mere genesis. Hannah's eyes opened to the house's anomalies. Built in 1828, its architecture a labyrinth of quirks, alcoves deeper than logic dictated, walls plumped with hidden voids, like the priest holes of persecuted Catholics in Old England. Measurements in hand, she envisioned a sanctuary veiled in deception. Craftsmen came piecemeal, each blind to the mosaic. One erected a false wall in the cellar, shelf pivoting like a revelatory door. Another carved a pantry trapdoor, rug concealed as the ark's mercy seat. A third tunneled to the backyard shed, earth-damp passage snaking like the Red Sea's parted path. Months blurred in toil. Hannah's savings dwindled, bread mere drops of crusts, her wedding band pawned, its gold transmuted into timber. Blisters bloomed on her palms, back bowed like a penitent's, driven by an inexorable zeal, as if the house itself whispered urgings from the divine architect. By year-end, transformation complete, exterior unchanged, a humble facade masking internals, a warren of concealed chambers, passages twisting like moral quandaries. Runaways poured in, their arrivals a nocturnal rhythm, knocks under moonless skies, figures melting into shadows. Hannah ministered without query or fee, binding wounds that bespoke brutality, feeding bodies starved as the Israelites in the wilderness, clothing them in cast-offs like Joseph's coat. No judgment for their desperations, thefts for survival, violences born of necessity. For who was she to cast stones, a sinner redeemed by grace? Yet as 1857 dawned, frost etching windows like etched commandments, an unease crept in, subtle at first, then insidious. January brought the inaugural anomaly. 3 souls sheltered, teen Marcus, 2 elders yoked in flight. Descending with victuals, steam rising from bowls of stew, scents of thyme and onion cutting the dank, Hannah swung the false shelf, revealing only Marcus. The men? Vanished. Belongings absent, no footprints in the dust. Marcus blinked, bewildered. "They was here, ma'am, talking about the North Star. Then you called me up, help with the chest. I went, but you wasn't there. Came back, gone. Door never budged." Hannah's blood chilled. She hadn't summoned him. Searches yielded naught. Tunnels empty, rooms echoing silence. Marcus departed, puzzled. Hannah rationalizing. Stealthy exit, perhaps, or memory's fog. But repetitions mounted. Guests evaporating like manna uneaten. Belongings sometimes lingering like accusatory relics. A tethered shawl draped as if mid-prayer. A whittled toy abandoned. Her diary, once mundane ledger, morphed into confessional. Names, dates, departures meticulously inked, yet discrepancies gnawed. 7 arrived this moon, she scrawled in April, quill trembling under lamplight. Yet 5 remain. Whither the twain? Did they flee unseen, or does forgetfulness plague me? The fog descends, as if dreaming in Babel's confusion.
October's chill gripped Lancaster like the hand of an unforgiving deity, leaves skittering across Maple Street in crimson whirlwinds whispering prophecies of impending strife. The Brennan house stood defiant amid the gathering dusk, its windows glowing faintly with lantern light, casting elongated shadows that danced like souls in limbo. Hannah Grace Brennan, now a spectral figure at 40, moved through her home with the deliberate grace of one attuned to higher callings, or perhaps lower hauntings. Her once vibrant eyes, now shadowed by sleepless vigils, scanned the dim interiors, ears ever pricked for the nocturnal knocks that heralded desperate pilgrims. The air inside carried a peculiar weight, thick with the mingled scents of damp earth, candle wax, and something indefinable, perhaps the residue of prayers unspoken, or the faint metallic tang of fear sweat from those who sought her mercy. On a particularly biting night, as frost etched crystalline patterns on the panes like divine script, a soft rapping echoed through the hall, urgent yet restrained, as if the caller feared awakening watchful demons. Hannah approached, her woolen dress whispering against the floorboards, and unlatched the door. There stood Sarah Ann, a woman in her 30s, stature bowed by burdens unseen, her dark skin etched with lines of endurance, coiled hair bound in a faded kerchief. Beside her clung a girl of 8 or 9, Lily, fair-skinned with hazel eyes that gleamed like forbidden knowledge, loose curls framing a face that spoke of tragic unions. No strong resemblance bound them visually, yet the bond was palpable, a maternal shield against the world's cruelties. "Sanctuary, please," Sarah Ann murmured, voice cracked like parched soil. "We've run far, but the hunters close in." Hannah ushered them in without question, the door sealing with a resonant thud that echoed through the house like a judgment gavel. Understanding dawned swiftly. Lily's lighter hue betrayed a paternal lineage of power and violation, a common biblical echo of Hagar's plight, enslaved, cast out, yet divinely seen. They stayed 2 weeks, Sarah Ann's twisted ankle demanding rest, a swollen testament to thorn-strewn escapes. In that span, bonds formed like vines in Eden's garden. Hannah, her maternal void aching anew, doted on Lily, the child a beacon of innocence amid shadows. Bright and inquisitive, Lily devoured the scraps of paper and charcoal stubs Hannah provided, sketching by the hidden cellar's flickering oil lamp.
Her drawings bloomed with memories flora, vibrant flowers from southern fields, scampering plantation critters, her mother's resolute profile. Yet others unsettled, veering into the surreal, depictions of the house itself, but warped, labyrinthine. Rooms multiplied in her art, spiraling inward like Dante's infernal circles, folding upon themselves in impossible geometries, doorways leading to voids where light dared not tread. Shadows lurked in corners, humanoid silhouettes blurred as if in motion or evasion. "What visions are these, child?" Hannah inquired one evening, kneeling on the cold stone floor, her voice a mix of wonder and dread, pointing to a sketch of endless chambers. Lily's hazel gaze met hers, unflinching, as if peering from ancient wells. "The sleeping places," she replied simply, her small fingers tracing the lines, "where the weary rest eternal." Hannah's breath caught. "But I've crafted only 3 such havens." A pause, then Lily's whisper, "More sprout now. Don't you heed the nightly labors? The house births new ones, deep down." A shiver coursed through Hannah, skin prickling as if brushed by spectral wings. Dismiss it as fancy? She yearned to, yet nights had brought auditory omens, distant hammering, saws rasping against wood, muffled constructions emanating from the earth's bowels. Dreams? Neighborly echoes? Or divine carpentry, the house expanding like Noah's Ark, preparing for a flood of souls? Sarah Ann and Lily departed on a crisp late October morn, sun gilding the horizon like promised land. Hannah provisioned them, hardtack, dried fruits, a map etched with whispered routes to the next station, 30 miles north. Embraces lingered, tears mingling like baptismal waters. They faded down the street, silhouettes merging with the mist, bound for freedom's uncertain shore or recapture's abyss. Hannah prayed silently, invoking psalms, "Hide me in the shadow of thy wings." 3 days hence, in the cellar's gloom, delivering sustenance to a fresh fugitive, a gaunt man with eyes like haunted coals, Hannah froze. A child's melody drifted from behind the bricks, thin and ethereal, weaving through the air like incense. The tune? Lily's heirloom lullaby, passed through generations of bondage, a haunting refrain of resilience. Heart thundering like apocalyptic trumpets, Hannah pressed her ear to the wall, rough masonry cool against her cheek. The singing persisted, fading to silence like a receding echo. Illusion? Exhaustion's trick? Yet conviction rooted. Lily lingered, ensnared in unseen realms, the house's grasp transcending departure. As 1858 unfolded, winter's grip mirroring Hannah's obsession, she delved deeper into the enigma. Hours vanished in the cellar, tape measure in hand, mapping her creations, false walls, trapdoors, tunnels, like a cartographer charting Sheol's domains. Yet logic faltered. Spaces defied physics, hidden rooms claiming volumes beyond the house's modest footprint, the shed tunnel stretching 70 paces when geometry decreed 30. Spiritual symbolism haunted her, perhaps a modern miracle, like the multiplied loaves, God expanding refuge for his oppressed, or a curse, the house of a voracious entity, echoing Jonah's wail, swallowing the faithful. Compelled, she summoned laborers anew, veiling intents as improvements. More alcoves, concealed panels, a labyrinthine addition. Yet completions birthed anomalies. Closets doubled in depth, rooms ballooned beyond blueprints. Workers, stoic carpenters with calloused palms, noted discrepancies but voiced not, eyes averted as if sensing unholy undercurrents. Did they deem her mad, a widow unhinged by grief? Hannah pondered her sanity, mirror reflecting a gaunt visage, gray streaking her hair like ash from sacrificial altars. Runaways surged, 50 by 1857's close, cresting 100 by mid-1858. Diary pages filled with litanies, names, Elias, Miriam, Josiah, afflictions, lash scars like Christ's stripes, fevers as trials by fire, durations, destinations. Yet shadows crept,
Vanishings catalogued, voices murmuring in tongues unknown, nocturnal footsteps reverberating like ghostly processions. Cold pockets manifested, temperatures plummeting as if hell's gates cracked, exhaling infernal frost. Spiritual dread mounted. Was the house a divine sieve, judging souls per Matthew's parable, separating sheep from goats? August 1858 brought peril's apex. Federal marshals at her threshold, badges glinting like accusatory stars, citing suspicious reports. Hannah's pulse roared like the Red Seas parting. 7 hid below, 3 adults, 4 innocents, their breaths hushed prayers. Arrest loomed, chains for all. The search commenced, upstairs ransacked, drawers upended, closets probed. Then downward, boots thudding on stairs like descending judgments. Hannah trailed, mind a whirlwind of pleas. Divert them, Lord, as you blinded Saul. Yet intervention proved needless. Marshals bypassed the pivotal shelf, one even reclining against it, oblivious. They departed with apologies, hats in hand. Relief surged, then horror. Swinging the shelf, Hannah beheld emptiness. The 7? Evaporated, belongings vanished like morning dew. No traces. Had they fled? Or were they phantoms of her fracturing psyche? That night, insomnia's vigil brought revelation. Muffled voices ascended through floorboards, indistinct yet insistent. The missing 7, ensconced in unattainable depths. Clarity dawned like Paul's Damascus light. The house lived. It burgeoned organically, ascension guardian or jailer, fashioning sanctuaries from ether, embracing the weary, but retaining some, perhaps those burdened by unrepented sins, in eternal limbo. Diary entries from late 1858 to 1859 chronicled descent, script erratic, crossouts like self-censorship, sentences aborted mid-revelation. Triplicate notations for November 3rd, one a family's arrival, grateful tears, another blurred counts, the third solitude's claim. Contradictions abounded, memories betrayal, or temporal distortions, the house warping time as God stretched days for Joshua. Dreams intensified, infinite halls, doors unveiling slumbering guests, Thomas hammering eternally, expanding realms, subterranean vastness thrumming with multitudes, silent as the grave. Time slipped. Mornings bled to nights sans recall. Cellar visits spanned days unnoted. Strangers claimed prolonged stays Hannah forgot.
Affliction besets me, she inked in January 1859, quill trembling. Yet I persist. They seek me as refuge, per Isaiah's call, hide the outcasts. To cease invites their doom, recapture, torment. My sanity's forfeit? So be it. A sacrifice on mercy's altar. March 1859 summoned Douglas, Mason extraordinaire, for final expansion, brick catacombs beneath deepest cellar, accessed via crawling conduit, a birth canal to underworld. 3 months' labor yielded crypt-like chambers, air oppressive as pre-storm skies. Douglas marveled, like Rome's buried dead, why such beneath thy roof? Hannah silenced him with doubled wage, oaths of secrecy. There echoes amplified, whispers like confessional murmurs, hymns faint as distant choirs, prayers in spectral tongues, memories or trapped essences. Desperates descended there, the terror-stricken, sin-haunted, finding safety. Few resurfaced. Guarded eternal, Hannah wrote. The house shields till war's advent, and it nears, nation's breath baited for Armageddon's clash. By 1860's dawn, tallies neared 200, an exodus mirrored in miniature, records once pristine, now chaotic, counts fluctuating like mana portions. Faces dissolved in memory's mist, mirror betrayed an aged stranger, skin translucent as parchment prophecies. Neighbors shunned, curtains perpetually drawn, midnight garden wanderings fueling folklore. Children taunted from afar, merchants eyed her warily. Yet secrecy held, no inkling of the subterranean maze, human-wrought yet divinely augmented, a purgatory where justice weighed souls. April 1860 heralded schism. Democrats fractured on slavery's yoke. Lincoln ascended, vowing containment. Fracture foretold violence. Hannah prepared. Stockpiles amassed. Beans like Job's trials, flour mountains, meats salted as Lot's wife, waters in jars echoing Cana's miracle, candles, linens, salves, arsenal for siege, her home a fortress against apocalypse or ark amid deluge. Yet doubts nod. Was this mercy's pinnacle or hubris inviting downfall? The house, once partner, now master, expanding, judging, keeping. Hannah's spirit frayed, a thread in divine tapestry, weaving redemption or ruin.
As the sweltering heat of June 1860 baked the Pennsylvania earth, turning the fields around Lancaster into parched canvases of cracked soil and wilting crops, Hannah Grace Brennan's home on Maple Street stood as an anomaly, a cool, shadowed refuge amid the nation's festering tensions. The air outside hummed with the drone of cicadas and the distant rumble of wagons, but inside, a heavier silence prevailed, broken only by the occasional creak of timbers settling like weary bones. Hannah, her frame gaunt and ethereal, moved through the rooms with the solemnity of a high priestess tending an ancient temple. Her hands, scarred from years of labor and now trembling with fatigue, clutched baskets of provisions, coarse bread loaves dusted with flour like manna from heaven, jars of preserved fruits gleaming like stained glass offerings, strips of salted meat hanging like penitential relics. The house had become her altar, her life's work a sacrament of salvation, or so she believed. The influx of runaways had swelled to a biblical flood, whispers along the Underground Railroad proclaiming her abode as the unassailable fortress between Philadelphia's shadowed alleys and Canada's promised shores. They arrived under cover of night, their knocks a coded liturgy, soft, insistent, like the persistent widow's plea in Luke's parable. Injured souls with limbs twisted like olive branches under storm, the fevered, their brows hot as the burning bush, pregnant women cradling bellies like vessels of divine promise, families with elders stooped as ancient prophets, children wide-eyed as the innocent spared in Passover shadow. Hannah welcomed them all, her doors swinging open like the gates of Eden reversed, not expelling, but enfolding. "Enter and find rest," she murmured, her voice a balm echoing Matthew's invitation to the weary. Space manifested as needed, the house obliging with an almost sentient generosity. The cellar, once a modest crypt, now sprawled like the catacombs of Rome, tunnels forking into uncharted depths, rooms budding like miraculous multiplications. Brick walls, cool and damp to the touch, seemed to exhale in rhythm with the hidden breaths within. Hannah navigated these labyrinths by lantern light, the flames dance casting grotesque shadows that twisted into forms, hands outstretched in supplication, faces etched in eternal vigil. The air grew thicker with each descent, laden with the sense of unwashed bodies, straw bedding, and the faint, acrid tang of fear sweat, mingled with the earthy musk of freshly excavated soil that no human tool had disturbed. It was in this subterranean sanctum, amid the brick-lined chambers Douglas had forged like a modern Babel's foundation, that the revelation struck. Hannah descended one stifling afternoon, basket in arm, the narrow passage constricting like a birth canal or a tomb's throat. The candles sputtered in the stagnant air, wax dripping like tears of the damned. She approached the deepest recess, where a cluster of fugitives, perhaps a dozen, their forms huddled in the gloom, awaited sustenance. As she stepped forward, a presence enveloped her, not corporeal but palpable, a consciousness vast as the firmament, intimate as a confessor's whisper. The house awoke, its awareness brushing her mind like the Holy Spirit's descent at Pentecost, yet laced with an undercurrent of judgment. She froze, basket tumbling, contents scattering like the crumbs from the 5 loaves. Her palms pressed against the wall,
rough brick pulsing beneath her fingers, a rhythmic throb like a colossal heartbeat, echoing the biblical lifeblood in veins of stone. No audible words, but impressions flooded her. Protect, conceal, preserve eternally, never release. Visions cascaded, flashes of terror absorbed, whips cracking like thunder over Egypt's slaves, chains rattling as in Peter's prison, hopes kindled like the lampstands in Revelation's temple. The house had transmuted, alchemized by the collective anguish of its charges, their desperation seeping into mortar and beam, birthing a guardian entity. It crafted realms beyond Euclidean bounds, pockets of existence where pursuers' eyes could never pierce, time's arrow bent into loops of perpetual safety or entrapment. Reeling upward, Hannah collapsed on the main cellar's chill floor, the stone grounding her as her mind spun in prophetic vertigo. Not madness this, no delusion of a fractured soul. The house lived, a divine instrument or demonic mimic, shielding as the ark sheltered the covenant, yet perhaps overreaching like Uzzah's fatal touch. The vanished, not lost to peril, but enfolded in its embrace, safe from recapture, yet possibly imprisoned in liminal voids, echoes of Lot's wife, preserved but petrified. Terror mingled with awe. Had her mercy birthed a monster, a spiritual snare where redemption twisted into stagnation? As autumn's palette painted the leaves in fiery judgments, crimsons and golds like the horseman's apocalypse, Hannah undertook her accounting. Weeks blurred in the dim kitchen, lantern casting a halo on scattered pages, her diary a chaotic testament like the fragmented scrolls of Qumran. Cross-references, erasures like self-inflicted stigmata, duplicates excised as chaff from wheat. The tally, 297 souls, each name a prayer. Nathan the first, Esther and Lily among the cherished, multitudes unnamed like the anonymous faithful in Hebrews' hall. Yet incompleteness gnawed, fogged memories omitted entries, nocturnal whispers hinted at unlogged presences, shadows gliding through walls, cold breaths on her neck, spectral touches like angelic visitations or demonic taunts.
November brought the culmination. A mother with twin teenage sons, their eyes hollow as famine's victims, bodies marked by the overseer's brand like Cain's curse. Hannah led them downward through twisting passages that seemed longer each traverse, into the abyssal chambers. Blankets unfurled like shrouds, food distributed as Eucharist. As they settled, Epiphany struck, 300. A numeral resonant with Scripture, Gideon's trimmed army, the talents in parables, a threshold of completion. The house hummed approval, walls vibrating like Jericho's impending fall. Ascending, Hannah seated herself at the kitchen table, its wood scarred like a martyr's back. Fresh page unfurled, quill dipped in ink black as Sheol's depths. May the Almighty pardon my deeds. 300 weary pilgrims sought haven here, and none emerged unaltered. She stared, the words blurring through tears, a confession laden with duality. Transformation through freedom's forge, or eternal mutation in the house's grasp, changed by grace or damned by overprotection. Exhaustion cloaked her like a burial linen. She had poured out her essence, fortune depleted like the widow's mite, health eroded as Job's flesh, sanity frayed as Samson's locks. Purpose fulfilled or curse consummated. In ensuing weeks, she withdrew, knocks unanswered, seekers redirected like the rich young ruler turned away. Descents ceased, the depths self-sustaining perhaps. Sealing commenced, a ritual of closure. Bricks mortared over portals, echoing Pharaoh's hardened heart. Tunnels collapsed with earth like Babel's confusion. Furniture barricaded passages, heavy as the stone before Lazarus's tomb. Finally, the diary, enshrined in oilcloth shroud, tin sarcophagus, bricked into a bespoke cavity, a time capsule for posterity, like Moses's tablets hidden in the ark. A loose leaf lingered on the table, final testament.
Should seekers unearth this, let them fathom the saga. Judge if ye must, but know I pursued righteousness, even if it veered to ruin, even if I consigned 300 to shadows rather than light. At least, proclaim I endeavored. Hannah Grace Brennan breathed her last on February 11, 1862, at 43, heart faltering like a flame guttering in wind. The coroner noted emaciation, 90 pounds of spectral frailty, hair snow-white as Revelation's throne, hands gnarled as ancient thorns. Neighbors, alarmed by silence, breached the door. Chaos reigned, rotting victuals emitting fetid incense, candles reduced to stubs like spent lives, grime veiling windows as sin clouds vision. No hidden souls, no contraband, just solitude's echo, a widow's husk. Interred beside Thomas in Catholic soil, her marker austere, name, dates, no eulogy, erased from annals like the unnamed in genealogies. The house endured, a relic cycling owners like souls in transmigration. First fled after months, plagued by nocturnal symphonies, whispers like glossolalia, footfalls as unseen hosts. Second endured a year. Third, a young pair with infant, bolted midnight, the wife raving of wall-bound apparitions, limbs protruding like the hand writing Belshazzar's doom. Successors echoed, frigid zones defying hearths, sobs of phantom children, doors swinging as if by seraphic hands, objects relocating like the moved stone of Easter morn. Dismissed as antiquity's quirks, yet some discerned profundity, a voracious essence, spiritual hunger lurking beneath clapboard skin. By 1957, infamy repelled tenants. Vacant triennium preceded demolition for commerce's altar. Crews unearthed the diary, igniting scholarly fervor, a chronicle of abolitionist valor, a woman's calvary for the oppressed. Excavations ensued, probes into the described warrens. Revelations astounded, not scant hideaways, but 20 chambers, passages coiling like Leviathan's coils, plunging to improbable abysses defying aquifers. Some meticulously crafted, others raw as if gouged by desperate claws, human or ethereal. Mapping faltered, complexity mocked blueprints, branches looping, dead ends sealed internally, tunnels fading into impenetrable void, lights swallowed as Jonah by the whale. Habitation traces abounded, tally scratches like prison calendars, murals evoking cave art, visages in anguish or ecstasy, terrains of lost homelands, arcane sigils perhaps invoking protection or curse. Fabric tatters, pottery shards, candle stubs like votives. Deepest crypt yielded horror, wall-mounted shackles, rope remnants frayed, restraint for recalcitrance, pre-existing artifact, fugitive memento, iron yoke of bondage. Workers whispered anomalies, tools failing as in Balaam's ass rebuking, voices murmuring sand's source, a child phantom darting, dissolving into masonry, invisible grasps in solitude, chilling as the grave's clutch. Probes halted, sight unstable, a euphemism for unholy. Passages infilled, structure raised, asphalt paved, later greened to park. Plaque honored Hannah, Underground Railroad heroine, yet enigmas persisted. Tracing the 300, archives scoured, censuses like tribal rolls, immigrations as exoduses, ecclesial ledgers, scant matches, survivors in Canada, lives rebuilt like Nehemiah's walls, most evaporated, no records as if blotted from the Lamb's book. Historians divided, eras archival voids, aliases veiling tracks, unmarked graves swallowing the fallen. Or, darker, houses expansion autonomous, entries implying retention. What if salvation morphed to incarceration? The entity, deeming peril omnipresent, enshrined them in timeless vaults, protected eternally, yet freedom forfeited, a twisted beatitude where the last are first in stasis. Certainty eludes, edifice vanished, secrets interred with Hannah. Yet the park whispers, watchers' gazes prickling necks, chills on balmy eaves as Gehenna's breath, murmurs wind-borne or spectral. Rarely apparitions manifest, figures amid foliage, ebony-skinned, wearied, garb antiquated, silent sentinels imploring recognition, remembrance, like the cloud of witnesses in Hebrews. They linger, then dissolve into twilight, history's ghosts. 300 souls traversed those thresholds. In some ethereal form, they abide, echoes of mercy's peril, divine justice's double edge.